What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rusto Mod. You guys seem to like our chassis swap projects, and we just wrapped up our C60 build. So if you guys have been watching the channel for a long time, our very first episode was of this 1959 Ford F250 that we found in the woods, and we got it up and running, and it was an awesome truck, and it just never got completed. We got it running. We actually ended up putting a Max Peating Rods turbo on it. We did a bunch of fun stuff with it, but it just kind of sat in the background. And today we're finally going to start tearing into it and doing our final build on this truck. But the big problem with it was the frame is actually cracked and it's welded in a few spots, and it's actually bent. The previous owner of this truck had a wrecker bed on the back of it, and he used this truck all day pulling out stuff out of the mud and the woods and stuff, and it ended up bending the frame. And the motor in it is completely shot. It's tired. There's no parts available for any of the axles. So if you guys have been watching the channel for a long time, you know that we can't leave anything alone. So we are going to do a chassis swap on the F250. Now, we have been messing with the F250 for a little bit, and we actually put on some 37-inch tires with short steel wheels on them to make that look. And we ended up naming this truck the Sasquatch project because it's all mixed matched, it's found in the woods, and it has gigantic tires on it, and I think the name is pretty fitting. Now, I've been trying to find trucks to actually use as a donor project for the Sasquatch so we can use the entire motor, transmission, and frame, but trucks are just getting really expensive. I was really wanting to do a 12-valve Cummins. It's very simple. I've had a bunch of them and they all run great, but those things are just absolutely insanely expensive. So I think I found the next best thing, and it is a Ford, so it's a Ford and a Ford, so I think it makes a little bit of sense. So let me show you guys what we're gonna swap. All right, so we picked up a 1994 Ford F250 four-wheel drive with a 7.3 turbo diesel. Now, I've been looking for a bunch of other trucks to be able to swap, and like I said, they're getting very expensive. So I picked this truck up. It's not running the best. We have a little bit of work to do with the engine, but the chassis of the truck is pretty rust-free, has a rebuilt transmission and a bunch of new parts on it. I snagged it for $1,000. So I thought it was a pretty good deal, and I think it's gonna be a really cool chassis swap for our Sasquatch project. I think the crude look of the Sasquatch with the big tires and the mismatched panels, and it's pretty rusty, found in the woods. I think an old loud turbo diesel in that thing would be super awesome, and it's very fitting to the look of the truck. Now, there are some big differences on the old Ford chassis and the new Ford chassis, and I will show you guys what we're going to be changing when we dig in and actually fit the cab on the truck. So now let's dig in, and we're going to start taking apart the new truck and the old truck and figure out a way to put this old classic Ford on this new modern 7.3 drivetrain. Well, Sasquatch is going under the knife first, so we're going to start pulling this thing apart. But before we do, I need to mark the center of the wheel in the wheel well on each side. That way I know where it needs to line up once I put it on the new chassis. Now, there is going to be one thing a little different compared to the C60 chassis swap that we're going to do on this one, and that is the wheelbase. So if we're going to run this factory bed on here, the wheelbase of this truck is actually 13 inches shorter than the new F250. So the reason is because they actually centered the wheel in the bed, and I think that's what makes this truck look pretty cool. Being a long bed, the wheelbase is still pretty short compared to what it would be like on a regular long bed. If you can see this truck, you can see that the wheelbase is longer because they moved the rear wheel back, and it has a bigger gap in the front and a smaller gap in the rear compared to this one where it's centered up. All right, so now I'm gonna mark where the center of the wheel well is real quick, and then we can start pulling this thing apart. So I got that wheelbase marked, so you can kind of see how far back it is with that piece of blue tape in the wheel well. Same thing with the back here. So might have to do some body work on this thing to try to make the tires fit, but that'll give us a benchmark of where we have to be. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to yank the bed off and get it out of here. So I actually got this gantry crane, and hopefully I can lift the cab and the bed off both these trucks with this thing. Got it on Amazon, and I figured it would be a big help with lifting this stuff. I don't have a forklift this time, so we're gonna try it this way and see how it works out. Well, we got the bed off pretty easy. Gantry crane works pretty good. Don't really like the chain fall. I wish I got like an electric one, but we can upgrade later. It should work for what we're doing. So now we got to pull apart this rusty cab. A lot worse than I remembered, but I can go ahead and pull the seat out. Everything that's inside here I can just yank out. It does have a removable transmission tunnel like the C60, but unlike the C60, it's all Phillips head screws, so I'm sure those will come right out. Ugh. Anyway, we'll see how that works. It's like Sweet Patina knows its customer base that we work on rusty junk. They sell skeet penetrating oil, which I'm probably gonna go through this whole can on this thing. But I'm gonna spray down all the bolts. It's freezing penetrating oil. Works really good to get some rusty old bolts loose. So let's spray this thing down. Hopefully we get this thing off. It is rusty. Well, I think I finally got everything unbolted or cut that I have to get off this thing. Most of this truck is completely rusted off. That front core support mount, completely gone. It's not even really holding anything down. Pulled the bolts out of it. This side, both of the cab mount bolts were completely rounded off and I had to cut them. So now I gotta rig something together because I really wanna try to lift the front clip off at the same time without it kind of tilting forward. So it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge, but I think we can get it. We got it out from under there. I'm gonna lower it down. It's a little sketchy right now. Then we can start pulling the other truck apart. See, I told you guys the flatbed is super useful and awesome for stuff like this. So going to start pulling off the cab and the bed of the donor truck and just getting to work on that. But at least we can move this thing around in the meantime. Got the donor truck pulled over here, so just like we did on the last one, got to yank off the bed, and then I'm probably going to end up just pulling this whole front clip off, but I got to be careful with unhooking all the wires. I'm not really sure what we're going to use and what we're going to need to keep on the engine, so got to go through that, take some time, make sure I see how everything's put together, pull this front clip off, pull the cab off, and then we should be able to see how everything looks underneath there and try to fit the old cab on the new frame. That's going to be the last time this truck is run as a 94 F250. So I am looking at how the cab mounts are in there on this one. Pull the carpet back, and there's a bolt in there, and then there's one behind the seat here. Looks like that one is going to be hard to get to because of the dual tanks. The rest don't look that bad. Since it was so difficult to pull the cab with the front clip on the other truck, I'm just going to try to pull the front clip off and then do the cab separately. I think that might be a little bit easier. So I'm going to start just unbolting everything. I've never pulled one of these apart before, so it's going to be a learning experience, but I'll show you guys how it goes. Okay, well that's probably not the way that you're supposed to do that, but that sucked. Well, anyway, I could not figure out how to get this harness out from underneath the core support, and I just decided to pull the whole front clip off at one time. There's a lot of little tiny wires. Somebody had run some aftermarket stuff on here that were holding me up. The only thing left I should have to do is unhook the brakes, unhook the steering, unhook the air conditioning stuff, and probably like the shifter cable, and then it should come off. I really want to just get to a bare frame at the end of the day and then try to put that on here tomorrow. All right guys, it's a new day. We are back on the truck, and we're going to try to lift the cab off this thing and see how it goes. I think I got everything unhooked, so let's try to yank it up and see what's left. Alright, finally we got ourselves a chassis. Man, this was a lot of work to get this off. It had a bunch of stuff connected to it, but the biggest thing that was holding me up that I didn't realize was the transfer case shifter. So once I got that out of the way, it kind of just pulled right out. So not too bad, but man, this thing is oily mess. So I think when the guy put the turbo on, he didn't put the turbo flange on completely down, and it looks like there's a big gap in it. So when it was running, it was just gushing oil out of it. So we have a big mess to clean up, but I want to try to get the cab off the C60, get it up in the air so I can start prepping that, because doing some rough measurements and stuff, it looks like the downpipe for the turbo is going to come in contact with the firewall. The other thing that it looks like is going to be in the way is, see how the frame rail kicks out on both sides? Well, the front has those two openings, so I think that that's going to be too narrow for this frame, and I really don't want to cut up the truck, so I'm going to have to see what I have to do. But I don't have a problem with cutting the frame. The only issue that I have is the leaf spring mounts right there, and I don't want to change any geometry or anything. So we're going to have to see. So I'm going to push this back. We're going to get the cab off there, get it ready to go, and see how it fits on this new frame. got the cab on the ground, so the next step is to pull out all the stuff that we don't need. These inner fenders are really rusted, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna break all these bolts trying to get it out if they come out. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to cut these or not. I actually do have new ones, well, new to me ones that are better shaped than these. So I'm not really too worried about cutting them out. I don't even know if they'll work. So I think I'm gonna just try to unbolt all this stuff. If it breaks, then I might just cut it and just get a clean engine bay to sit down on the new chassis. Well, we got a little bit more room now. I had to cut those things completely out. Like I said, I do have replacement ones, but honestly, I think we're gonna have to just make them ourselves because it looks like it's gonna be quite a bit different. But we're gonna find out real soon because I think we're ready to go to be able to slide this under there and see how it's gonna fit. I'm pretty excited, a little bit nervous that we're gonna have to cut some stuff, but that's just the way it goes. Now, I am not moving the engine forward or back. I want to leave everything as stock as possible. Same concept with the C60. Want to make sure that I can go to the parts store, get parts for this thing. It's a more modern chassis. They should have stuff available for it. They have basically everything for OBS Ford, so all the stuff we should be able to get pretty easily. So that's the plan with this. Leave it stock, and we're going to have to trim the cab up to make it fit. So let's lift it up in the air and see how it looks. All right, a lot of fighting, maneuvering, and moving stuff around and trying to jack up and down and sideways. It's a lot of stuff to move around with a gantry crane, and then I'm picking the front up with the engine hoist, but it's not too bad. Let me show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so I got the front of the truck pretty even with the frame. You can see these two cutouts here, how I was saying these are a lot wider. It looks like it's pretty close. So we have our mark, which got kind of messed up, but at least it kind of gives me an idea of where I need to be, and then we can dial it in a little later. And then on the other side, we're pretty close as well. You can see our mark here. Looks like this needs to come forward just probably a few inches here. Once we get that straightened up, the big concern is the firewall and the back of the turbo there. It looks like that is gonna hit. It looks like it's going to be pretty close, but I might have to cut that flange off at the very least to be able to get it to come down. Alright, so the closer we get, it looks like the worse it's going to be, but you can kind of see it taking shape. Okay, so first problem is the front clip of the body is hitting the frame. So like I said, when I measured it, I have it pretty close, but it looks like I'm gonna have to cut this piece here to just clear this section of the frame, which isn't a big deal. But I would really like for this to sit down on top of the frame like it did originally. The next thing that's a problem is the wheel well. So the wheel well is way too far forward because we don't have any clearance here for the back of the turbo and the cab, which I pretty much thought this was going to happen. So I'm going to have to cut a lot out of the firewall, unfortunately. I want to get this thing way forward quite a bit, and the motor is going to be kind of invasive into the cab. So it is what it is. That's where the motor position is. There's no way that I'm going to be able to move it forward enough for it to make any difference in the cab, because you can see how tight it is. This engine bay is just very narrow and it's not supposed to go on here, but I wanted to do it. It's gonna be really cool when we're done. We just gotta cut some stuff. So I'm gonna trim out a little bit at a time, slowly move the cab forward, and then drop it down. So we marked out the firewall. We're gonna have to cut quite a bit out of here. We have to go back 7 inches. So I'm gonna start cutting it out and slowly inch it forward. Well, this truck used to be blue or something. I'm actually down on the frame. All right, well, we finally got it. Man, this thing fought me every step of the way, and I'm a mess. So it's finally on there, not the way that I thought it would go. I thought it fit a little bit better. I knew I would have to cut some stuff, but it's a lot worse than we're gonna have to do, but we're gonna have to make it work. So let me show you guys what it looks like. So here is 1959 F250 on a 7.3 turbo diesel frame from 1994. So I went with this chassis just because I thought the motor would be a little bit farther forward. I have a buddy of mine that did a 1960, which is the same pretty much body style, on a Super Duty chassis, and his engine was basically like beside him in the cab. So I knew I'd have to cut a little bit. I didn't realize I'd have to cut this much. I thought it'd be a little bit better than what it is. But if you look on the inside, it's not terrible. Now, we did have to cut quite a bit out, but it's not like completely in the transmission tunnel is in the cab. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. Like I said, I'm gonna have to replace a lot of the floor sections anyway, so we're gonna be doing some cutting on this thing. But I got the hood back on so you can kind of see what it's gonna look like. So I just have some wood spacing it up in there, but we cut this out here on the front, so you can see that is just a little bit wider, and I don't think it looks that bad. So we can still have a place to mount a bumper or whatever we're gonna put on the front. And on the rear, it didn't hit any of the cab mounts like it did on the C60. This rear rail is just resting on top of the frame. So I haven't even looked underneath here yet to see what the rest of the cab mounts are gonna look like, but if you could see that, it looks like our cab mount is pretty close to the original one there. And then obviously we're gonna have to make something work on the back. The ones on this truck are inboard of the frame rather than outside the frame. We did a lot of work to get the wheel well lined up pretty close. It's very close. It's not exactly perfect, but neither is our little tape. But we were trying to measure it, trying to cheat it a little bit, but I don't think it's too bad. Looks like it's centered up in the wheel well pretty good. And then when we put those 37-inch tires on there, it's gonna look even better. Underneath the hood, it's a little bit of a mess. So if you can see, our turbo is very close to the firewall there. It's actually resting on top there. And I don't want it to interfere with our windshield wiper motor, which is right next to it. So once I get everything figured out of what I have to do with making all the cab mounts and stuff, I might end up raising the cab up a little bit just so it's not so close to the windshield wiper motor. I don't want that to interfere because they don't really make much aftermarket stuff for these trucks, and if it's there, I'd rather use it than have to figure something out. I took 2 trucks apart with an Amazon gantry crane and some cutoff wheels, a Sawzall, and we made a more modern chassis underneath of our classic truck. Not terrible, it was quite a bit of work, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are excited to see how this project comes about. We are going to have a lot more work to do on this thing, so thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, so you can stay up to date with the Sasquatch F250 and all the rest of the projects here on Rustomod. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.